In this video, I'm going to show you the completion of the starboard hull side, and by the end of this video, we will be almost ready to start attaching the hull bottoms to the hull sides. In this video, we're going to continue the planking of the hull side. This is the starboard hull side, and we finished the plywood reinforcement, and now it's time to start adding the cedar planking below the waterline. So I've started by dry fitting the first few boards, and down here you can see what I have set up. So I've measured a few of the boards here. None of these are glued in yet, but I wanted to come up with something I mentioned in an earlier video about putting a clamp extender. So I just built this very simple extender by taking a board and screwing another board on down here. My screw is a little bit too long, so I put some tape on it to cover the screw head the screw tip that's sticking out there. And on this end, I screwed in another board here. And again, my screws were a bit too long, so I put this little spacer here so that the screw tips wouldn't stick out and poke into the plastic that's eventually going to be covering this. So with this, we can have an edge here to hook the clamp onto, to then be able to hook it onto this edge and pull these cedar planks in tighter towards each other and remove any bows. And all of this is being pulled up against the edge of the hull side down here. So, you know, everything is being pulled in from one side to the other like that. So, yeah, so I think this is going to work good. And if I need to make another clamp extender, I can. But for right now, I'm just going to see if I can get by with just the one. And yeah, it's time to epoxy these in. Oh, one other thing is that because of the angle of the clamp, this clamp is actually slightly pulling up because this clamp is angled up a bit. So you need these sandbags to hold it down. Without the sandbags, the whole thing will want to pop up. So I need to make sure that I've always got sandbags on these when I start to apply the clamping pressure. All right, time to get it epoxied on. Almost all of the cedar planks have been epoxied on now and have one last piece remaining. And before I get to that one, I wanted to show you the angle, the beveled edge that I didn't point out in the last video, but this piece of wood here has already been beveled down, so it's angled down, and I think that matches the level quite nicely in here. So I don't need to come along with the sander later and try to take out a lot of this wood that's already been taken out. It might actually be a bit difficult to get some of this epoxy out with the sander, but we'll see how that goes. All right, so for the last piece, that one will go on right here. I've got this thin strip of plywood that's peeking out from underneath the planks here, and it needs to go on. And I have this board. I'm going to move it over here a bit so you can see that this board is quite warped, and it's got a bend to it, and that's okay. Oh, and it's also got a crack right here at the end. So this is cracked. So normally I would have a difficult time using this board, but because I don't need the full width for this, then what I'm going to do is lay this board right here, just like that, and draw a line and cut off most of this down here so that we have a straight edge. So that when this board gets planked on, I'm going to cut most of this bowing out of it, so it will fit on there nicely, and we'll be able to use this board that otherwise I'd probably end up either cutting up or maybe just throwing away, but this is a good use for it right here. All right, so let me get this drawn and I'll cut it out and show you that. So after cutting this board along a straight line, it immediately bowed a little bit, but that's okay. This is the piece that we're going to be using for the planking, and this is the cutoff piece. So this one can be thrown away, and this is the board that we're going to use. And if you look down here, you can see that along this, what was a straight line, is now bowed a bit, but that's okay because this is thin enough that it'll easily be able to be pulled back into position. In fact, if we turn it on its side, you can see that it mostly, even under its own weight, just lines up with the flat surface of the hull side. So this piece will now be able to fit in right here, and this is what I mean with the bow that it has in it still, but that's okay because that can be pulled up with just a little bit of clamping pressure. We can close that gap. All right, so we have the board that will be used for the final piece of planking, and I'm going to get that epoxied on now. It's time to sand off the excess epoxy that is sticking up, and I thought I would show you the difference between using the random orbiter sander and the belt sander. So I have another camera here set up to provide a close-up while I'm doing the sanding, and I'm going to get my respirator on and do a little bit of sanding with each so that you can see the difference between these two sanders, because there's a lot of epoxy that I need to sand off of this. So that was about maybe 10 to 15 seconds of sanding with the random orbiter sander. And now let's see what the belt sander does. And that was about 10 to 15 seconds with the belt sander, and you can see it took a lot more of the epoxy off, and I mean a bigger pile of epoxy dust also, but that's why I use the random orbiter sander when it comes to sanding this much of a surface area, because it just goes through this so much faster. Alright, so I'm going to turn the cameras off and sand the rest of this hull side. Everything is now sanded, and I actually used the random orbiter sander quite a bit here along this concave portion where this kind of bevels in, because I found that the belt sander was just taking off the wood too fast, and it was easy to cut too far into the wood. So slowing that down a bit with the random orbiter sander was good for that. And the other thing that I needed to do was smooth off this edge here. So I lifted the whole side up by just putting a board here underneath to lift it up off the plastic so that I could sand off the epoxy squeeze out here. And I want to do that because the next step is going to be to flip this hull over to cut off the excess planking, and I didn't want these sharp edges sticking out here, which would just tear up the plastic here. So getting this edge smooth first is important to be able to flip this whole side over. So I sanded each of the hull bottoms one at a time on the support using the belt sander, and after that was sanded, I was able to place the hull bottoms side by side, and then went over any of the gaps and filled those in with some slightly thickened epoxy. I wanted it to still be fairly thin so that it could be pressed into the gaps, and so it would kind of form its way into the gaps on its own. And now that that has mostly cured, I'm going to flip this whole side over and cut off the excess planking along the edges. The extra cedar has been trimmed off of the starboard hull, and this is what it looks like after trimming and a little bit of sanding. Here's another view of the starboard hull side. I propped it up a bit with some boards so that I could cut off the excess cedar planking. So it's kind of propped up a little bit, and there's a bit of a gap between the hull side and the build platform. But this is the hull side. It's almost finished. A little bit more sanding to be done, and this whole side will be done. And what I'm going to do after that is rearrange all of this for assembly. And I'm thinking I'm going to slide the starboard hull side over this direction. I'm going to have to move some of this wood out of the way, and I'll probably end up stacking the wood on top of this hull side after it's over here, because I'm running out of room. And I will take the port hull side that is standing up right now and lay it down where the hull bottoms are currently located, and get it ready for starting to put it together. Alright, so I think that will be all for this video. I'll go ahead and get it posted soon, and that will be all. Bye.